Okay, good evening, everybody. I would like to call the Regional Council meeting to order for October the 15th, 2024. Welcome, everybody who's here, anybody who's online, welcome. I'd like to acknowledge Northern Rockies Administrative Center, where we're holding our meeting now, is located in the heart of traditional territory of the Dene, Cree, and Dunnizah people of the Fort Nelson and Prophet River First Nations. Further, we recognize the rights provided by our common treaty, and we also celebrate the contributions and enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually, as being streamed and recorded. Are there any council additions to tonight's agenda? I have one. I would like to talk about appointments at new business. I think new business is 9. So 9.1 will become appointments. Anybody else from council? Staff, is there any additions?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any public in the room or online that would like to comment on tonight's agenda? Online? No? In the room? Okay. Adoption of the agenda is in order, please. Moved by Councillor Enoch, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We have 4 sets of minutes for adoption. We have the Committee of the Whole from September the 3rd, Regional Council meeting September the 3rd, Special Regional Council meeting September the 12th, and a Special Regional Council meeting of October the 2nd. Somebody like to move those for adoption, please. Moved by Councillor Enoch, second by Councillor Grooving. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, those are adopted. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Council? Questions, comments, staff, any business arising? No? Thank you. Okay, that takes us right through to agenda item 7.1, which is the award of the airport janitorial services. Staff, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this first report is provided to outline a bidding opportunity for cleaning services at the airport, as the existing contract is due to expire at the end of November. Following the closing date, a total of 6 submissions were received, and staff is seeking approval to award to the lowest compliant bidder, being H&G Contracting.
Thank you. Councils, any questions? What do you wishes? Councillor Andrews?
I'd like to move the recommended motion that the airport janitorial services contract be awarded to H&G Contracting 0786108 BC Limited in the amount of $27,497.64 annually, plus applicable taxes, for a 2-year term with an option to extend for an additional term by mutual agreement of both parties.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Andrews. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gerwing. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. That brings us to item number 7.2, report number 49, the award of the solid waste residential curbside collection. Ms. Graves?
Yeah, so this contract is also due to expire at the end of November. So a bidding opportunity was published and closed on the 26th of September. We received only 1 submission, being Wide Sky Disposals. Their submission was deemed compliant, and the recommendation is to proceed with the award.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, what are your wishes? Councillor Roper?
I'll move the recommendation that the solid waste curbside collection contract be awarded to White Sky Disposal 1989 LTD in the amount of $101,100 annually, plus applicable taxes and annual increases for a 3-year term, with an option for an additional term based on the mutual agreement by both parties.
Thanks, Councillor Seconder. Councillor Sol, second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Passes. Thank you. The next item is the award of the fuel supply contract. Ms. Graves? You were busy.
I am, yeah. So this last report identifies a bidding opportunity for fuel supply to the municipality's fleet and equipment. The RFP included bulk supply, self-serve via card lock, as well as a potential tank rental at the Public Works compound. 2 bids were received on this one, and although they were both competitive, it was determined that the proposal from FN Bulk Sales provided the best value to the municipality. So the recommendation is to proceed with a 3-year agreement with the opportunity to extend as agreed by both parties.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, what are your wishes? Counselor Andrews?
I would like to motion that the NRRM proceeds with establishing a 3-year agreement with FN Bulk Sales for fuel provisions to the municipality with an option to extend for an additional term based on the mutual agreement of both parties.
Moved by Counselor Andrews, second by Counselor next. Thank you. Just- Is there any discussion? I seen 2 hands go at the exact same time. Your question? Yeah. Or a comment?
Just a comment, yeah, I just like to note that Port Nelson Bulk Sales was available for fuel servicing during the evacuation, and I like seeing that they were the competitive bidder on this one.
Good. Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the work. Okay, 7.4 on the agenda is administrative report number 51, which is update for the Ready program Q3. Ms. Penny, welcome again.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So MIM Report 51 provides the third quarter report on the successful applicants to the Ready program and the relevant financial disbursements. So you will see that 7 recipients received housing benefits, 7 received utility benefits. There was 1 new recruit welcome package and 1 recipient of financial incentives for a total of your third quarter, 15,850. And a total for the year to date is 51,687.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Penny? Okay, I think that's just for our information. Oh, there's a question?
No,
Counselor Andrews?
just a comment. I know it was mentioned in the committee of the whole, but this is probably the information we'd like to bring to our council to council meeting, I'm thinking.
Good. I think we have that on. We've added that, I think, to our list.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 7.5, report 52, read the Viewpoint Economic Marketing Project Update. Report for our information. I see Ms. Vandersteen is here to speak to it. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, so this admin report is here for your information, just to update you on the project and that it is moving forward. So earlier today, I did get some further information from Viewpoint, and they are looking at a scheduled release in the US in November and December. So it is getting slotted in, and I'll continue to work with them on their distribution. And then advise as soon as we're able to start using it for our own internal purposes. We'll also start doing that whenever it's reasonable to do so. And then it just has a bit of an open, I don't think we need a full motion, but if council is in favor, we can work with the Chamber of Commerce to potentially do a soft showing for community members that attend the Community and Business Awards as part of the celebration of our community, because that's also not being streamed. According to my conversation so far with the chamber, there's no plans to stream it.
Okay, thank you for that report. Are there any questions for Krista? It's been a bit of a process, but it looks like we're close to a spot where we might actually get to see this on, US television. So it's exciting. Are there any comments with respect to a soft showing of this at the Chamber of Commerce Business Awards night? Comments, Council Andrews?
If we need a motion, I'd make a motion that we allow it to be shown at the Chamber of Commerce Community Excellence Awards,
Provided that it's not live streamed.
provided that it's not live streamed, correct? Yeah.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Gerwing. Discussion or comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Thank you. Yeah, it is. Item 7.6 is Administrative Report number 53, Rural Economic Diversification Infrastructure Program Application for a Grant. Mitch, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Give me 2 seconds to get organized here. All right, so the first report here that is in front of you outlines the opportunity to support the development and broadening of our economy. For us to complete this application, it requires regional council support, and the application deadline is October 31st. The proposed project will focus on broadening the economy. Some of the deliverables for this project will include development of an overarching economic strategy, identification of gaps that prevent business growth and attraction, and an action plan to address these challenges with the ultimate goal of creating a more business-friendly environment in our region. It is important to note that there is currently no foundational economic plans or strategies in place, and this project will ultimately require a $20,000 contribution that would be identified in the 2025 budget as a special project.
Thank you, Mitch, for the report. Council, have you got any questions? Okay, then what are your wishes? Councilor Roper?
I think it's a great opportunity. I would like to move the recommendation that the Regional Council authorize an application to the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program for an amount up to $100,000 for the development of an economic diversification strategy.
Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Andrews. Is there any discussion? So, oh, go ahead.
I just have a question about the 25,000. Does that have to go in here or does that
Yeah.
go at budget time?
That's exactly what I was gonna bring up. Are we committing to the 20,000 now in order to make the application, which would mean that we gotta put it in a budget or something, so we're predetermining a budget amount.
Yeah, so the application does not state that you need the support now. It says it is suggested or can be in addition to, but ultimately does not need to be provided right now.
Part of the application. All right, have we got a comment?
I was just gonna add, typically, if we do commit to something, then it just goes in as a pre-approval or no, not like using the word pre-approval, but previously passed through a resolution of council.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't like it.
Right, so it's typically something that's been committed to, which you'll see in the next report too. essentially.
Okay. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The Community Shuttle Transportation Program is the next item on the agenda. Report number 54.
All right, this is a big one, so stick with me. A lot of moving pieces to this, all pun intended. So just before I begin this, I just wanted to give a special thanks to McKenna and Lindsay, who among all the partners did a fantastic job and a lot of great support putting this together. So with that, there's been a lot of work that has gone into this, into the development of a transit system. So it's important to just understand that this will need to be flexible as we grow. The information presented is a collection of information from the partners who supported by building the schedule, the budget, and then any potential pitfalls or asks of the program. As the report notes, the Northern Rockies Senior Society currently holds this grant, and they've identified that they are willing to continue this service. However, noted that without appropriate contributions or other supports, that the initiative is likely to not fail or not meet the community standards or community needs rather. A couple things I did note from this that came from the last council meeting are 1, service to Prophet River First Nation, and 2, ride hailing services. Just that I both want to speak to that they have been explored and are in process of being worked on, as each of them have their own complications to them. And they do require further discussions than what time kind of permitted us to put this together. However, there's been a bit of future proofing in this budget ask that allows for some administrative pieces to move around and support growth of this program to include service to Prophet River and ride hailing services. The last thing I'll note is just the budgetary ask is projected costs for worst case scenarios. So the budget numbers have been based on actual figures used currently by Diversified Transport. They've supported with putting this together. And so we use very conservative figures for both projected income, which would be your ridership fees, your sponsors, advertisements along those lines, as well as projected costs. So maintenance, any potential capital costs, such as outfitting the bus for safety measures or ongoing operational costs. And then both the confirmation for support of this project and monetary support is required to be confirmed prior to the application, which is to be submitted by 4 p.m. on Friday.
Thanks for that, Mitch. Comments or questions from council? Councilor Grooming, please.
Yeah, great. Thanks for this report. Certainly answered a lot of my questions as I was reading through it. I just have a few confirmations, please. It says, in addition to the regular fixed service, the second bus will provide an on-demand transportation, limited daytime hours for seniors over 70 or individuals with mobility disabilities. So wondering why age 70, where did that age come from and why is it there?
So I think that's one of those pieces we didn't anticipate to get right 100% on the first go. It was just identified that that would be specifically the vulnerable population. I'll use vulnerable that could use that service for those limited hours. Now that's once again, that's open to discussion. So if that needs to be adjusted, it can be adjusted.
I just know my work with the Lamplighters, there are several users that aren't 70, but depend on it. And so I would like to see that 70 changed.
For sure.
Just make note of that. And then my other question was, it says, if the NRM was prepared to commit the necessary $55,000 annually to make up the revenue shortfall for the service of the first 2 years, what if the shortfall is greater than $55,000? Where does that get made up? Are we making that up as well?
So just before I answer that, what would be the age that you'd like to see the change?
I don't know.
It does include people with mobility disabilities too, right? So if
Right.
there's folks that are say 40 and are in a wheelchair or can't walk, right? Or whatever the case may be,
Right.
that is open to them as well.
I don't know that I have an age off the top of my head. I mean, CPP kicks in at 65. The Lamplighters membership begins at age 55. I know that people reside in Grace Manor that are 50 plus, I think it is. So maybe we need to just do a little bit of research on the users that are currently using the service.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, so let me read this down and answer your next question.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. And then in regards to the budgetary considerations, so just a bit of background to that. So the 55 is essentially like absolute worst case scenario. So the chances of it going over, very, 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 very slim. So a few of those pieces that I built in is there's a contingency budget in there as well. There's also a 10%. I essentially added a 10% on top of it to all basically anything that we're putting in the budget was 10% grossed up. So with that, those numbers are inflated, like I mentioned. It's very conservative. And then on the other end of that, ridership fees are anticipated to go up significantly just based on the fares that are being proposed, in addition with a circle route. And so the likelihood of it happening, very, very slim. Now, if it was to go over, I ultimately, I guess that would be a conversation. Yeah, so
So I guess what I would like to try to understand is that if there is a shortfall, the NRM is assuming responsibility for that shortfall, not the other partners. I guess is what my question would be.
So it's a hard one to answer, really. I think the initial conversation would be with McKenna and then in between with staff. And then we go from there, right? So one of the asks is that, you know, we are an active partner in this and that we would approach all the partners as a group and figure out how we can make this work as opposed to continuing to come back and say, we need more money, we need more money. So ultimately, I guess, yes, is the answer to that. But really, like, I think there's ways we could build in maybe safeguards to prevent that ask from occurring.
Okay. Can I continue? or-
Yes, you can.
Okay, so then I just want to make note that under options that's recommended, it says a lot of words and it says talk about multi-pronged. But then it says, and the NRM commits a maximum of 55,000 annually for a 2-year period. So that safeguards us. Oh, no, yeah, so we aren't going to be paying more than $55,000. So the two pieces aren't coming together for me.
So yeah, so the 55,000 is working through that budget process. Is the 55,000 was ultimately the maximum shortfall of after building in all those contingency pieces. And that's also in consideration of not having any other partner contributions to this. So just with the time crunch, right? That was really our biggest hurdle, was we weren't able to get full commitment from other potential partners. Although there has been verbal conversations of, yes, we are 100% interested. We are willing to potentially commit this or this. But once again, no actual commitment to it. So with that, the 55,000 would be essentially, if we were to cover the whole thing, that's what that cost would be, up to 55,000.
Okay.
Over and above what NDIT puts in.
And so it'd be over and above NDIT sponsorships, such that McKenna would essentially collect advertisements for the bus. All those budgetary pieces that got factored in for revenues and then costs as well.
You have one more question?
Yeah, sorry, you guys good if I go? Yeah. So with the $15,000 that we contribute annually to the seniors busing project, would the $55,000 incorporate that $15,000, or would it be 55,000 worst case scenario plus the $15,000?
So the 15 right now is currently slated to end as of, I believe, this year.
Yeah.
So
we
the
vote on it
grant,
every year.
yeah, so the grant essentially, this grant we found out is actually being carried by the Senior Society right now. And so the transition is now we're essentially expanding the service more or less. So to answer your question, it's 55. And that would replace the 15.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, whoa. I thought Council Andrews first. Go ahead.
So these conversations with the potential funding partners, you say, are going promising. Like you said, it's worst case scenario. Going to our constituents and explaining their taxation going to other places might be difficult. So if there's contributions from all partners, I could see a full support. I just think there might be a little sticking point there.
Which is my comment of, because it's going to be traveling possibly down to Prophet River and Fort Nelson First Nation, that's another agenda item for our meeting that we have with them to talk about transportation, because I know they just bought a bus too, and they're trying to figure out how are they going to utilize it. It's sitting in the parking lot right now. So maybe there's some sort of collaboration there to provide either equipment or time or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was a piece that was built into the budget as well, is that in calculating it, it was about, anywhere between $600 and $1,000 a day to just run a bus to profit, because it essentially works out to be a full-time gig. And so in building this budget, the understanding was that the conversation is going to have to be with profit, is that there's going to need to be some significant financial contribution. And what we're willing to do is build that administrative piece in. So logistical, potentially drivers, right? Figuring out drivers for that busing, figuring out training. So training was also built into that as well. So the administrative and logistical pieces are there. It's just where that funding is going to come for the fuel, the maintenance, and essentially the bus to travel back and forth. And so it has been identified that that bus is an asset that can be used. It's just, once again, getting that 100% support from their chief and council.
Okay. I've got I guess a couple of comments. This is an extension of a service. It's not a new service because the councils in the past have supported the seniors transportation. So that part of, this is an expansion of a service that we've got. It comes with some risk. There's no doubt about that. In order to get something like this off the ground. I would take the word maximum out of there. You're absolutely right. If something, the worst were to happen, and even though you've done your best to make this a very conservative budget, unless there's, you know, the best happens, which is a whole bunch of people come in with sponsorships to help out with this thing. If it goes sideways, we're on the hook for it, right? I mean, there's no better way to say it, I think, than that. We become on the hook. It's a service that the municipality is now providing to the general public, not just a specified part of the general public. And the grant that's coming from NDIT is there because it's they're looking for opportunities to expand transportation between communities. Prophet River's not in on the for 55,000 right now. So, you know, it's, you said it's between $600 and $1,000 a day. And, you know, that would probably mean they don't have to just come in as a partner, but if they're buying seats on the bus, you know, you have to look at the budget to try to cover that. Right. So whether it's employees down and employees back and school kids back and school, you know, into town and then school kids back, then now you can bring the school board in because they're running a bus. And so there might be synergies there that can work out with respect to working that. I'm disappointed that Prophet River is not in yet, but if we get this service established and we're speaking, and it sounds like we are, there's potential for us to grow that as part of this. But at this moment in time, Prophet River is not included, or the expenses are not included either in the budget, from what I can see from you. So, or from your report. So that covers off my issues with respect to Prophet, you know, not being in here. But I certainly hope that we'll continue, you know, soon. Let's not wait till we get the grant, or because if we don't get it, there's still an expectation from this council that we do more about transportation. We've been saying that for a while now, and this is the closest we've come, I think, to get something that's both inner and outer to our community. With respect to Fort Nelson First Nation, you know, they may not come in initially with respect to partnership, but again, there's tickets to be sold, right? They're not riding the bus for free. There's an expectation that if they're going to come in, so whether the individuals out there that want transportation pay for those bus tickets, or, you know, bus fares, or monthly, whatever the passes, or whether the nation pays for them, there's revenues there from them. So it's not like they're not contributing at all. The riders will contribute. So that helps for as many riders that come. And I see, you know, it's four trips a day to the community across the river. So, you know, that, and they seem to be spaced enough that you'll have some time to do some business in town and then be able to either get your groceries or finish your doctor's appointment and get back out. So that makes a lot of good sense to me. I think it's certainly a good first start. I think, you know, but if your time frame was that limited, then I mean, we shouldn't be the main partner, right? I don't think NDIT wanted municipalities to be the main partners in these. They wanted there to be groups between different municipalities. I mean, it's easier when you're you know, Fraser Fort George, or you're out to the west there, there's a lot of communities that can get involved in these kind of things. But I think you've done a pretty good job with respect to the way it is. But I would take out again the word maximum there. I think it's 55,000 to start, and then it's a discussion after that. And that would go into next year's budget, but I'm hearing there needs to be a commitment now for it. Because it has to, because it's an NDIT application, they want to know where the money's coming from. Okay, so we would have to commit to the 55,000 per year for 2 years, $110,000 towards essentially a bigger transportation service. Okay, those are my thoughts.
I would like to leave the word maximum in there. Because if we get to that awful point, that's a stop point, right? Then it comes back to council, or before it gets there, it comes back to council, and then the council can make a decision if they're going to contribute more money. We would have more information on the ridership, like has the community supported it? There would just be so much more data that we would have to make a better decision at that point in time. But for me to vote in favor, I would have to have the maximum word left in there.
And so just as a thought is we can always bring updates in regards to how the program's going to at an interval if that's makes sense.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think we'll have a really good idea 1 year into the program as to how we're going to end up our 2-year term. It sounds to me like there's enough provisions built in that we're likely to see less of a spend. So if that does occur, does that lessen the financial responsibility of the Northern Rockies? Or do we just put in the 55,000 and then any surplus funds goes towards the program? How would that work if there is a substantial savings?
Yeah, so the idea would be that, you know, we work closely with the senior society in regards to that. And so how the conversations have essentially been is that the shortfall will be covered off by the NRRM. So then, you know, that comes into some of the reports that McKenna will end up doing, right? And then from there, it would essentially the savings would stay with the NRRM.
So you just wouldn't requisition the money?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we're willing to consider going over the maximum with a meeting, because it was not my intention that we would, you know, that would go over 55,000 without talking about it, but if that makes you comfortable, but yet you're still open to the fact that they can come back for more money after, then I'm comfortable with the wording the way it is. Yeah. Councilor Andrews?
Without having a commitment from the communities we're making stops in for funding, I don't think I would be comfortable in supporting this.
So you don't think the fact that the individual riders out there paying their own way is enough?
The community members' taxation would be funding a lot of this, and they would also be paying for ridership. So I think the ridership's going to be split amongst everybody anyways. I think we need to have the communities where they're being stopped at be contributors as well. I would need a commitment from them for the program.
So we're definitely not going to get that before Friday when the application has to go in. Okay. Is there any other comments? I think staff has made it clear that they want to continue working with the other nations and potential partners to see if they'll make a contribution. So anybody else comments? Okay, so I do not believe we have a recommendation on the floor yet. Somebody like to make a recommendation?
I recommend that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality supports the Northern Rockies Senior Society in their application to the NDIT Northern Community Shuttle Program, and that the NRM act as a collaborative partner as identified in the application, and that the NRM commit a maximum of 55,000 annually for a 2-year period, and that staff continue to work with NRSS and seek additional partnerships to support the implementation of the program.
Thank you. Moved by Counselor Souls. Do I have a seconder? Second by Counselor Gerwin. Is there any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Would you like your name recorded? Okay, thank you. Record Counselor Andrews' name as opposed, please. That passes. Thank you. Good
Thank
discussion.
you.
That takes us to 7.8, report number 55, which is updates to the council communication policy.
As council's aware, there was recent discussion around procedures for responding to official correspondence that comes to council. We've proposed some amendments to the council communication policy. So though originally we thought that it might require amendments to the procedure bylaw, it would be appropriate to amend the communication policy in much simpler as it is. So we can walk through it if you like, and just confirm some of the how we interpreted the direction anyways and how it's reflected in the policy. This one is one of those aged policies. So 2015 it was adopted. And so we've taken some liberties around some just administrative updates where there was duplication. But essentially, if you look at the third page of the policy in the page-to-page comparison, there's a fair chunk there that's highlighted, and that's where we've reflected what we took as council's direction in responding to correspondence. So we have reflected that correspondence directed to mayor and council, excluding mass mailings or letters we receive by carbon copy, which we would typically provide to council either through the council information package or in the for information section of your agenda, is intended to receive, all correspondence except those for information items would receive an acknowledgement reply to say that this is when it will be reviewed by council, and here's the information on how to participate in the meeting if you wish to attend. Further to that, if it's something of an urgent matter, then we would circulate it to council by email and ask for instruction. Otherwise, it would be placed on the next occurring agenda. So council meeting, or sorry, correspondence that is a call to action or has a request would be considered to be a discussion item. And that's where council may choose to provide specific instruction on how they would like a response to be prepared. But the other instruction was that all of those should receive a response regardless of whether there's explicit direction and what the response is to say. So I think at least for our benefit, maybe a little bit more discussion there would be helpful. Because we don't want to be in a situation where we're inferring what the response might be in the absence of direction. So at this time, that's how it reads, but anyway, I'll open it up for council's discussion there maybe.
Thank you. So there's one other item that I thought didn't need a reply from us, and that's when somebody has corresponded to us in response to a correspondent that we've already sent them. So for instance, if we send something to a minister and the minister, sends something back, I don't think we need to respond immediately. It needs to go on the correspondence because we might not have liked what they said back to us, and we might want to then respond, but it would then fall into what does council want us to say? That way it's not left up to staff or the mayor. It goes on to those agenda items for discussion at a future council meeting. But I think we cover off the request that I heard with this policy rather than in the bylaw, because policy is easier to amend and to adopt, and staff made it clear to me that this would be the right way to do it instead of amending the procedures bylaw. So I'm comfortable certainly with the fact that it's in policy. But I think that covers off everything that you asked us to look at, particularly the mayor. If it's addressed to me specifically, then I will determine whether or not it needs the bigger answer or whether I can answer, but always it will get the admin, they'll get a response saying immediately that we've received your request and it will be on such and such a meeting and here's all the details. You can participate if you like. But if it's addressed to mayor and council, then we need to decide will we respond and how will we respond? Instead of leaving it up to staff, they're not comfortable writing letters on our behalf. Okay. So that's what I understand these words to mean. There's a few other ones that I think in here that are they've just clarified some stuff for us. So I'm comfortable with it the way it is. Anybody else have any comments? Councilor Gerwing, please.
I love the way this is presented. Thank you very much. I so appreciate it. End of comment.
Just so the people out there understand what it is, it's the old copy, the new copy, sorry, the old copy of the policy, the new copy as proposed with highlights where the changes are. I really like it too.
So much.
We endeavor to make it simple for you.
What's that supposed to mean?
Well, there's
What's
a
that
lot
supposed
there's
to
a lot
mean?
to go through. And if I may, just a couple other
Yeah.
points of note for the policy. So one was that there was some content in there that you might have noticed has strike throughs, and it's just because it's in duplication of what we now have as our respectful workplace policy.
Yeah.
So it was no longer really appropriate in this policy, but it does remain in a more relevant policy. Also, there's a fair amount of content in this policy, which is more around code of conduct for council. So 2 years ago or thereabouts, the province provided some direction around an obligation of local governments to consider codes of conduct for their elected officials. That discussion was taking place at the same time you were all elected. And while it seemed at the time that there was going to be a requirement to adopt a code of conduct, what was actually adopted was that councils are required to consider whether they adopt a code of conduct. So we've not actually made that formal consideration, or you've not made that formal consideration as a group, but essentially, if you have one that exists, you discuss whether it remains true to the day and you keep it, or if you opt not to have one, then you just have to rationalize that, and then that becomes part of the public record. So we don't have a formal code of conduct per se for council, just what exists in this policy. So that might be something that council wants to have a more fulsome discussion around in the coming months. Then the last point is just around a communication strategy for the organization. So there was, I think, the discussion that council undertook to come up with this procedure and give that helpful direction in terms of how to respond to correspondence is like the seedling of a larger potential communication strategy, which is something that we've wanted to undertake for some time. And we began it with the former council, and unfortunately it didn't come to fruition. But if council's interested, it's something that we'd like to potentially introduce in the 2025 budget discussions as a project for next year. And it would be kind of a facilitated conversation to understand where your goals are at and how we engage with the community and the tools that we use and procedures and policies for staff to ensure that we're meeting expectations and accomplishing what we've set out to for communication. So we've come a long way in the tools we use and having a person dedicated to communications for the organization. But there's still a long way to go in terms of formalizing that. So it's something tangible that any new employee or existing employer, incoming member of council can kind of wrap their heads around too. So yeah, I guess wanted to understand if it's something that might be of interest and we can work on putting something in next year's budget potentially.
Okay, there's a lot there to unpack. Does anybody have any comments with respect to what Jay just said? Okay,
I appreciate the report and the way it was presented also with the previous and then what's proposed. So one of the conversations I recall that sparked this review was all the criminal activity and that stuff that's going on in the community and us not having a way to communicate with the community members to update them, you know, as quickly as information comes in. Does this policy cover that? Because one of the things that we had talked about at the meeting was video content, and I love the way the mayor did the emergency evacuation updates. Every night at 6 o'clock, there was an update. So when, you know, something unusual or out of the norm is happening in the community and we have information, or even if we are just saying we're looking at it, we're reviewing it, we're working with the authorities. I don't know if this policy covers that.
No, so the policy as it is doesn't really have that, it doesn't form any kind of real vision around how, under what circumstances council might use various tools to communicate, it would be really helpful. But we ad hoc it, we make the decision based on what's happening at the time. So ideally that future policy would reflect all of that. You know, when we do video updates, when we do Facebook updates, what warrants a press release? Like right now we kind of use our, you know, best practices, but that's not formalized anywhere. So it takes a lot to kind of explain that every time something arises, and or work with staff when they, you know, they have a certain idea around communication, and then we have to refer back to how we might have been doing it in the past. And then balancing that with the expectations of the public or of council or whatever in terms of how we might communicate when something's happening. So yeah, today's policy doesn't talk about any of that, but it would be great to get there.
yeah, I think the comments that you were making with respect to communication strategy would cover that, right? In the bigger sort of context, because then if we have a facilitated discussion around what that looks like, it starts to put some meat on the bones of what the expectations are. And I mean, it's, you know, I've been criticized for perhaps not being quick enough on the draw, particularly when it comes to, you know, the fears and that sort of thing that people have. But I'll just say clearly that my mind around communication is not wired that way. You know, if I don't have the answer to the next question, which is going to come from, and we recognize that there's a problem, we're concerned about your fears, we're concerned about what's happening to you, and we're working with, you know, the agencies. I think that's what I heard you say. You know, my expectation is the very next question from those same people will be, and what are you doing about it? And I don't think about communicating with people if I don't have that answer, that secondary answer. So, but if there's because my mind is just wired differently when it comes to how I want to communicate with people. So, but if there are others who think differently with respect to the way that is, then a facilitated discussion which brings in those thoughts and you know, when I talk about an appointment that I'm going to make later today, it's partly based around that thought process and communication. And so I think that strategy discussion will help us to define what that looks like, not just for this mayor, but any potential future mayors who have a different view of the way they communicate with people generally. So I think I would like to see us, you know, pursue that strategy of the overall communication, which the policy becomes part of, right? So that's my thought on that. With respect to the secondary part that you had there, and I'm just lost the code of conduct. Thank you. I believe that today's meeting, before we started today's meeting, we had a little bit of time and we were talking about you know, the conduct of some other councils, and we were talking specifically with respect to the women that are on those other, and how some of them are being bullied and really not paid attention to. You know, it seems to me that's not happening to us, but it's happening in other councils. It is a problem in other places. It's obvious because the province is thinking about it, and that's why they put that in. And not just to women, but really the way all of us speak to each other within the council. I thought, again, in my view, that the procedures bylaw sort of sets that out, because it says how many times we can speak and how we'll talk respectfully. There's some words in there. And I don't think this needs to be a big exercise, because councils have been doing it for 2 years since the province. So there should be something out there, best practices that we should be able to grab fairly simply to pull together and have a discussion about. So I'd like to see us do that as well, sooner rather than later. So those are my thoughts on what Jaylene has said. Anybody else have any comments with respect to communication and the tact that staff would like us to go on? Councilor Andrews?
I'm in agreement with the code of conduct thing. Let's have a look at it, have a conversation. I think that one would be easy. Communication is always a big topic from council to council, year over year. So if we can start tackling this to make it easier for the future councils and members and community members, it's going to be a big project. I'm assuming, but you got to start it somewhere. So yeah, I think we should start looking at it for sure.
Thank you. Anybody else? So what would staff have us do? Would you have us authorize a change to the policy the way it's written? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss? Go ahead. If you,
Okay, so I would make a motion that the council communication policy be updated with the amendments identified.
moved by Councilor Goring, second by Councilor Andrews. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Can I make another motion?
Yes, you may.
I would also make a motion that staff bring back costing for a facilitated communication policy development. Something.
For inclusion in
Sorry.
the 2025 budget
Sure.
discussion. Okay, moved by Councilor Goring, second by Councilor Enox. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Okay. That takes us then to 710, which is the community facility fee waiver policy. Oh, did I miss it? I'm sorry. Oh, 7.9, the service recognition policy update. Ms. MacGyver, please.
So this one may be catching you a little off guard, but it's come up over the past, essentially what triggered this review was it's come up over the past couple of years when we're planning our annual Christmas party that employees have some fairly significant concerns about our annual service awards being presented in conjunction with this large scale celebration. And some of it comes down to comfort and personal preference of being recognized among a large audience. And sometimes it's honestly just that people are more comfortable among their peers in a smaller group. So if we were having that look at the policy, we thought we should take a look at the thing as a whole. So what we also recognized was that the award values may not reflect what was intended when it was originally developed a dozen years ago or 10 years ago. So there's been some proposed updates to the values. And we also wanted to ensure that there was a bit more choice for employees. So some employees have actually asked if they can donate their award directly to a charity of their choice. And I think at one point, employees had to pick from stock that we purchased and had on hand, and some people just refused to even accept it. So it was just, the intention is to thank employees for their loyalty and their service. And so giving a bit more flexibility seemed appropriate, so that they can choose what's important to them. We also wanted to look at the eligibility of awards for employees that work all combinations of time throughout the year. And then also do some adjustments to the retiring and departing employees section. Because again, some employees retire after dozens of years and others leave after 5, and there was no real differentiation between what that might look like. So open to council discussion.
Thank you. For any questions or comments on the proposed new service recognition policy?
I have a question.
Okay,
So our policies, when we develop our policies, do we normally set a review date? I think we should look at our policy on policy and set review dates. Cause,
Agreed. Yeah.
yeah, because these values are way out of date.
Yeah, and I think, well, one of council's strategic priorities is around good governance and a routine review of bylaws and policies. And we have a lot of legacy policies. Cheryl, our records manager, loves to say that in 1996, we developed all of our policies because there was like 25 all adopted at one meeting in 1996. And some of them that remain unreviewed after that time. So to have a policy on policy review, honestly, it seems silly, but it's not a bad thing. Because I think it would, yeah, it's necessary. We just haven't got there, so.
great. Any comments on the service recognition policy? Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everything, except I would like to, under retiring elected officials, it says a $200 inscribed framed print. I would like to have the option to donate to a local organization as well, or instead of.
Unless it's that Fox spirit that's staring at you, right?
I don't look at that.
Okay, well. There is one glitch in this that I noticed that bothers me a little bit. And if you look on page 2 of 3 of the proposed bylaw, there's a table there that talks about the values award in 2024 and the potential value of the award in 2025. And at 20 years, currently it's 2,000. And effective in 2025, it would go down to 1,500. And I asked staff about this, and so Aaron got me sort of they looked at it from the perspective of, it seemed like there was a big jump in the old policy from sort of 15 years at 500 to, 20 years at 2,000. And, she looked at this chart. And so for the first 5 years, it was $20 per year, 10 years, it was $30 per year, 15 years, it was $33 per year. And then when it went up to 20, it was $100 per year. And so they recalculated it and looked at year 5 at 50, year 10 at 50, year 15 at 50, year 20 at 75, year 25 at 80, and then 30 and 35 would be 100. So they took it up incrementally more fair. That I guess incrementally more.
More
word
of
I'm look-
a pattern.
a more of a pattern,
Yeah.
right? Rather than pulling it out. My concern with that is that we're reducing something that we've already had in place for quite some time. The $2,000 mark has been there for the folks that have been here for 20 years. And I think that's a long time. And, if I was in year 19 and we changed this in year 19, that's $500. But to me, it's, I just don't want to see the policy go backward. I just assume that us leave the numbers at 20 years, the same as they were in the old one at 20, 25, 30, and 35 for those longer term employees, whether it's a cash award, they give it to somebody or, an agency so I'd like to see them stay the same, but I'm interested in your comments on that. Councilor Andrews?
So you're just mentioning in the 20-year and 25-year, they're both years there, they dropped.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so to just match them,
Just leave them the way they were.
lay them, yeah, that makes sense to me for sure.
Anybody else? So anybody who doesn't think we should make that amendment? Okay. So if we can make that amendment, oh yeah, and Councilor Goins with the donation? Okay. Are we looking for? Yeah, it was information. So you want to take, you're gonna bring this back to us for approval or what? What are your thoughts?
If you're comfortable with those amendments, you can resolve to adopt with those amendments.
Okay, so I'll accept that. A resolution to accept these amendments to put in the new policy. Moved by Councilor Gerwing, second by Councilor Enox. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, now it is the community facility fee waiver policy for adoption. Mrs. MacGyver, you again. Oh, Stacy this time.
Torch on this one.
Okay.
I made it to the meeting tonight. so We're good. I didn't put a fancy side by side for this one. Hopefully.
I
There
Noted.
I'm sensing a best practice here.
wasn't an old one, so. I'm taking notes though, so the next one will be side by side for sure. But after your guys' last meeting, you provided some feedback, which we put into the proposed draft that we had presented last time. Those are highlighted there, those small additions. And if council is satisfied that those met the recommendations, it is up for adoption. And to adopt this one, we have to rescind the recreation rental exemption policy that this is replacing and amend the operational practices of the grant and aid program that we have in place right now that includes facility fee waivers. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Just wondering, one of the components of this is the applicant must demonstrate financial need for waiver. So how are we defining that? And yeah, I don't know if that we have any answers, but I think if we put something like that in there, then we best have some sort of plan that actually, like, what demonstrates financial need?
Yeah, we would mirror the practice and application process that the grant and aid program currently uses. So it would be presentation of a budget.
Hmm.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's financial need. Not to get sticky, but
No, that's
because you would submit the budget for a project. It doesn't mean you're not submitting your whole organization's budget, right? So just trying to determine financial need, what we're using to make that judgment. And then my other comment was that this will all start in 2020, even though it's adopted today, it won't begin until 2025. Is that correct?
That's at council's
Yeah,
discretion when
we
when it comes into effect. So we're through our grant and aid process for the year. So we've held off on any notifications for grant and aid until we had finalized this, because there will be a portion of those applicants that would probably go this route instead. So depending on, the enactment date. That's up to council.
Thanks.
So with Council Growing's point in mind, with respect to the financial need, could we potentially define that? So I think our intent was to say that any of our nonprofits had the ability to apply for this. I think if we look at the what are we calling them? The legacy activities. I think that funeral services might fit into that sort of automatically without sort of trying to, I think the expectation is that the family is already burdened and there's no expectation that some would get it and some wouldn't based on their financial ability. Those are staying in, yeah, those are staying in, but I'm just thinking with respect to item, what the heck was it? F, applicant must demonstrate financial need for the waiver. You know, I think you could probably define that a little better with the philosophies that we had, because I don't think it was really about whether they had the money, it's whether or not
They're
they
providing
actually are
something.
contributing to cultural enrichment and capacity building activities, those sorts of things. I think the intent was that it was not for commercial use. Right? So we might be able to take that right out of there and just define that a little better with respect to who's eligible.
It might already be covered in the eligibility requirements, and that is just additional restriction that is maybe not necessary in the policy.
Yeah,
Might be something where we just put what the intent of the policy is for.
yeah,
The intent is not, it's not for profit organization, so it's not for
yeah.
commercial or business, it's for nonprofit. And then the intent is basically because it's not necessarily for an organization that's in need financially. It's a
Yeah.
nonprofit organization, anywhere they can either save or bring in revenues or funds is a benefit. So this here is just assisting, it's not an additional burden essentially if the fees waived.
Yeah.
I think, so it's probably what the council's intent is, which would be the philosophy behind the policy.
Which,
And if we
which means
remove-
that line could probably.
And we
come
can
right out.
remove
Yeah,
that.
if we
portion.
define it. Okay, is there any other comments? I think it covered off everything, the 4 waivers per year, the fact that it would be a one waiver would be used up if they had to cancel within 7 days or last minute. I think everything, the cultural enrichment was added in there, so that's, yeah. I'm comfortable with it with that addition, or with that change around intent. Any other comments? Everybody else okay with it?
When do you see it start?
Oh, yeah. So why wouldn't it start right away? What are you thinking?
I'm kind of thinking in the new year, just to provide equity to all of the groups, like the groups have some groups have based their fundraising activities and their events on the old policy. So to change it now could maybe be perceived as an unfair advantage for people that are having upcoming events as
Late in
opposed
the year.
to, yeah. So I just thought if at the beginning of the year, it's all fresh, we can advertise that this change and then organizations can make their plans accordingly. Is how I was thinking about it.
Anybody opposed to that logic? Makes pretty good sense to me too. Okay, so we'll enact this January 1st, 2025. So then a motion, please, to adopt the community facility fee waiver with the changes to be effective. Right, and to rescind the grant,
No. Recreation rental exemption. policy.
recreation center rental exemption policy.
Oh, there it is.
And an amendment to the grant and aid program. All 3 of those in the same motion.
Okay, yeah, that's me. What he said.
Moved by Counselor Gooding as written by our staff. Did you catch the majority of that? Because we should try to make it clear for the folks who are listening.
Recommendation B with the effective date, January 1st, 2025.
And the exemptions and changes.
Yeah, that includes the.
Okay, all right. Further discussion? Seeing that, all in favor? Opposed, it's carried. Thank you.
Who seconded?
Oh.
I thought Brenda did. Yeah, Brenda had her hand up.
Okay, did I forget to ask that? Sorry about that.
Had her heads up.
Okay. Counselor next, seconded. And we voted in favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
711 is the zoning amendment for site-specific personal services establishment. So it's a zoning amendment bylaw number 228 for first and second reading, I believe.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
So this zoning amendment application seeks to allow personal services establishment on the property located at 4448 50th Avenue North. If this amendment is successful, this will facilitate the potential business who is planning to operate a business related to massage and aesthetic. And the pros and cons of allowing this business is outlined in the report. Based on my evaluation, I have made the recommendation, but if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you for the report. Are there any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Don, go ahead.
Just to comment, it was a great report and it's really nice to see new life in that building. So I'd be happy to move the recommendation number 1 that first and second readings be given to Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Zoning Amendment site specific personal services establishment bylaw number 228 2024, and that a public hearing on the amendment is scheduled for 6 p.m. on November 12th, 2024.
Thank you for that. Do I have a seconder? Counselor Dickey? Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot of reports there. So thank you to all the staff who spent a lot of time on those reports. I mean, I'm not sure I'm not sure if I actually thanked everybody, but my intent was to thank everybody because there was a lot of work there. So thank you for all of those reports. Thank you for the discussion. I think there was some good discussion there. Okay, that brings us to correspondence,
Mary's
informational
still
packages. Oh.
There's still one more report.
Okay.
We're not done yet.
Thank you. Item 712, I don't know how I got ahead of myself there, but that's twice in the same meeting. So the 2025 permissive tax exemption bylaw number 229. Staff, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm assuming you can hear me.
Yes, thank you.
All right. You have before you the permissive tax exemption bylaw for first, second, and third reading. It identifies 34 properties to have their property assessment exempted for the 2025 taxation year. It includes 2 new applications, one for building utilized by the Anglican Church and as well as the Fort Nelson Motocross Club. The table attached identifies approximately $180,000 to be exempted in 2025. So this amount is approximately $10,000 more than we estimated for the 2024 amount. It's a combination of the additional 2 properties, a change in property assessments, most of them increased slightly, and any changes in tax rates. Our requirement is to have this information to BC Assessment by October 31st.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pike, for that. Council, do you have any questions or comments about the report? Seeing none, somebody would like, okay, please.
I was wondering, when businesses or charities put in an application to have their tax exempt properties, how does the Elks classify themselves? Because I don't know if the Elks is actually, are they functional?
So there's 2 parts to the application that the Elks puts in. They identify that they have a business venture
that operates within the hall. And so that commercial assessment is not exempt, but access to the halls and venue areas that are considered public is provided to BC Assessment to identify those areas and to provide an estimate of those areas being exempt.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. What are your wishes? Counselor Ober?
I would move recommendation one, that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality 2025 permissive tax exemption bylaw number 229, 2024 be given first, second, and third readings.
Okay, moved by Counselor Ober. Do I have a seconder? Counselor Gerwing, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now let me thank everybody for the hard work that you've done. Because there was a lot of work there by everybody, so thank you. Brings us to correspondence. We've identified for discussion item 8.1, which is a letter from Chief Counselor Fort Nelson First Nation. 8.2 is a letter from Sylvia Weeb for discussion. If there's a motion to put those on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Counselor Andrews, second by Counselor Enoch. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. First item for discussion is a letter from Archie Harold, Chief Counselor Fort Nelson First Nation, looking for a meeting request.
I'll try to make myself available at any time will work best for our council neighbors across the river.
So we wish to respond saying that we would like to meet.
Yep.
And if we can find a mutual,
At the earliest convenience, it works for the most, ideally all.
okay, so we're gonna set staff to try to endeavor to pull a meeting together of the two councils, okay? I mean, we know we have a meeting on the 28th to discuss very specifically the community forest. But I think we want to expand this to a larger agenda, which I don't know, we identified 3 or 4 here tonight already, so. Yeah, okay. So a resolution, please, for staff to work on that and for the mayor to send a response.
I'll make a motion that staff work with First Nation staff to make a council to council meeting and the mayor respond on the behalf of council.
Yep, that's good. Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Counselor Enoch. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.2 is a letter from Sylvia Weeb, request for support for the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association. Counselor Enoch, this letter came to you. Would you like to speak to it at all, or?
I never seen it until I picked up my package. So I was unaware that it was even coming. I mean, I would like to help all the veterans, but this is Ontario.
Okay.
I know what, I'm unclear as to what the ask is and what it would be used for, like, as I'm going through it, I think the ask is to sponsor this gathering in Ottawa for this, yeah, to celebrate or acknowledge the 80th anniversary. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that that was everybody else's understanding too. That's what the ask is for this celebration or event that's happening in Ontario. Yes, okay.
Yes, that's
you.
my understanding. And I thought I read somewhere that potentially there might be a memorial wall constructed as well. But I'm just not putting my finger on it. But it's a reunion there somewhere. They're trying to raise $130,000. So. Am I seeing any motion? Seeing none, then we will move on. This is a compelling story, actually, and every year at Remembrance Day, I try to give a little bit of a history, and I think I might use this year, because I think it's, it's a story not a lot of people know and are aware of, so I think I'll use some of this information and roll it into the speech that I give on Remembrance Day. So, some good stuff there. Hmm?
Give him $20.
Okay, so that moves us to items of communication for information, and there are 13 of them there for information. Moved by Councillor Enoch that we receive those for information, second by Councillor Grewing. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. That brings us all the way down to item 9.1, which is any additions, and so I do have an addition that I would like to make. It's been 2 years, almost 2 years. We're in the middle of our term now. And I would like to switch things up a little bit, partly to do with my own personal need. The time commitment has been great. I do need to take a job this winter, and I've accepted a job with BHP Billiton in Saskatchewan, where they're doing a project out there until March, and so I've worked out a 14-7 schedule with them, where I'll be out in Humboldt, Saskatchewan for 14 days, back in the community for 7 till the job's complete. I suspect probably middle of March. So with that in mind, as well as with the idea that we should probably switch things up a little bit, I've decided that when it comes to the acting mayor appointments, I'm going to switch it up a little bit, because the Municipal Act allows me to do that, and I'm actually going to appoint a deputy mayor for a 1-year term. And so I would like to appoint Councillor Grewing as the deputy mayor for the next 12 months, a term of 12 months, and we'll evaluate the process then and look and see whether she still wants to do it, or whether there are others who might want to do it for the term after that. I think it will help me both from the perspective of having somebody who's consistent with respect to the meetings. When I'm not here to chair them, I expect they'll miss 3 or 4 meetings. I'll still attend the meetings virtually, but I can't chair the meetings virtually. And so I think to have somebody who is doing that consistently and here to work with staff, I think Councillor Grewing would be good with that. I also have learned in the last 2 years that we think a little bit differently with respect to communications, and I've said that earlier in today's meeting, that I see that as an opportunity for us to understand the needs of communication for the public. I think we can do better that way if we're communicating, and she's giving me her thoughts with respect to what might be needed, and I'm considering that with the same way that I have always thought about communication. I'm open to reconsideration. I just don't think of some things myself, and so having somebody who will put those communication ideas in my head will certainly be an assistance to me. So that is something that I'm going to do, is I'm going to appoint Councillor Grewing as the deputy mayor. I also am going to change the portfolios up a little bit. I've spoken with Councillor Dickey, and she's interested in the education portfolio, and so I'm going to move the education portfolio over to Councillor Dickey, and I appreciate the fact that you'll do that. And I've spoken with Councillor Enoch, and she's prepared to take on the recreation portfolio. So I appreciate both of you for being prepared to spend the time that it'll take to work on those 2 portfolios. Everything else will stay the same for the rest of this year's term. So that's everything I had with respect to appointments. That brings us to item 10.1, which is counselor reports. Do any of the counselors have any reports? Counselor Gerwin, please.
Okay, so September 6th and October 4th, I attended the CHP, so the Community Health Plan Steering Committee. There was a survey distributed throughout our communities in September with the intention to update our statistical data on how much residents are spending for medical travel outside the community. Of note from that meeting, also BC Emergency Health Services have 4 new casual employees, all the result of their local recruiting efforts, mainly at the trade show. So that is proving to be very fruitful for them, and they're very grateful for the community. September 12th and 25th, I attended the BC Rural Health Network Board meeting and implementation committee meetings. September 13th, I met with Dan Campbell and Stephanie Aldridge from Hope Air, all around Dan's idea to do scheduled medical travel from Fort Nelson to a receiving hospital and then back the same day. You know, progress is really slow, but it's progressing. September 14th, I attended the Work BC's Disability Employment Awareness event. The 17th, I went to the Lamplighters Board meeting, and I'm really happy to report that the Better at Home program has really expanded, and it's becoming such a valuable support for many seniors in our community. I don't know if everybody's aware of what the Better at Home program is, but they have a big presence online, so you can check it out. But it just very briefly, it's the idea, it's the United Way has funding. They give to community groups and all around keeping our seniors in their homes for as long as possible. So some people require shoveling help, yard maintenance, housekeeping, and there is a very great need for meals. Right now there's Meals on Wheels only 2 times a week. So that's something that Better at Homes hopes to look at in the future. Yeah, so that has really been going good. On the 17th, I chaired the EAC meeting in which we had a great discussion on ways to increase business participation in vermicompost. The 19th, I attended the chamber lunch, which had guest speakers presenting immigration information pertinent to business and individuals. It was an eye-opening presentation for sure. On the 30th, I attended Fort Nelson First Nations community gathering in recognition of Truth and Reconciliation Day. October 1st, the mayor, Diana, and myself met to discuss the terms of reference for PCN, which is a primary care network project. So I'm really hoping that that is going to bring a large resource into our community funded through the province. Well, it comes from the province and then Doctors of BC down the line. And that's going to fund, I think, 4 positions health related in our community. So that will be amazing. October 2nd, I attended the virtual board meeting for NCLGA. And I just wanted, I think everybody knows, but just wanted to make note that the NCLGA, in partnership with the Claytley Tenay, the City of Prince George, and the Regional District of Fraser Fort George, are hosting the Mental Health and Addiction Symposium November 13th and 14th. So they're bringing together representatives from multiple agencies and governments and aimed at addressing critical issues in mental health and addictions. So it has never been done in the North before. So if you're at all interested in that field, it would be great if you could attend. October 12th, I attended Culture Fest hosted by the Fort Nelson Community Literacy Society. And this event is just near and dear to my heart. And it's such a wonderful gathering. Highlighting the many different cultures that make up Fort Nelson. It was really well attended with lots of good food, and the entertainment I hear was really good. I was in the lobby, so I didn't get to see it, but it sounded good. And then I have 2 questions. I just want to know when the meeting recaps from UBCM will be shared with council. I see Scott smiling. And then I just wanted to talk about, or just to give it a little nudge in that after our evacuation, we at a council meeting, we spoke about figuring out some gift to give the city of Fort St. John. A couple of ideas were bandied about, and I think we were going back for more information. So just nudging for that more information. And so in addition to something for the city of Fort St. John, we wanted to ensure that all the fire departments and rescue organizations that lended assistance here, that they would get, we thought that frame picture. So just looking not necessarily for an update tonight or anything, but just want to keep those two things on the agenda so that it doesn't get lost. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other Councilor Yanex, please?
September 11th, I attended the TAC meeting, and on the 19th of September, I was invited to be a judge for the EMS presentations at Rig Safety. All were well done. So hats off to all the new EMS and training. The 28th, I spent the day at the Friendship Center with the old Fort Meade Nation, making ribbon skirts for the elders. So the skirt that I made will be presented to an elder at the next meeting.
Right.
And on the 30th, with Mayor Fraser and Councillor Gerwing, we all attended out at FNFN to the ceremony and the walk for National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. However, I couldn't make the barbecue because the dogs were late to the groomers. October 8th, I attended the Tourism Development Day over at the VIC. And on the 5th of I reversed these. On the 5th of October, I was fortunate enough to be invited out to FNFN to the sweat lodge that Leona Smith does. It was myself, Dr. Lupu, Dr. Mostert, Dr. Drula, Diana, and 2 helpers, and it's incredible. And if you ever get invited, I really highly recommend you go. October 12th, I was at Culture Fest. Not long, but I was there. It looked like it was a great event. Everybody was having a great time. And I agree with Councillor Goering. It was very well attended. It was busy the entire time. And I do have to say, I've been watching the progress, and my sidewalk looks beautiful. And I'm not opposed to a ribbon cutting ceremony when it's finished, just saying.
Love a naming, so. Brenda's side. I'll be there. Thank you for
Okay.
that, Brenda. So I attended the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting in August. That work is really inspiring, and we have a ton of work to do. I was in Vancouver for my UBCM appointment for the Real Estate Foundation. I really appreciate working with that board, and I'm on the Watershed Security Committee and also the advisory board for the land awards. And then I went to the golf course for their election. The election, the board is pretty much the same as last year. They're really excited to be working with the NRM maintenance team, who really provides a lot of support in the work that they need to do. And then September 30th, I attended the Fort Nelson First Nation Truth and Reconciliation Day. Also attended the Oktoberfest and working at the provincial election. So everybody get out and vote. We're doing really well. Like in our area, we've already had 3,000 votes in 3 days. So
That's good.
I'm working on the 19th, and I'm thinking it's going to be pretty quiet.
Yeah, not gonna be many lineups.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was wondering, yeah,
Gotta be.
through our meeting that we had with regards to safety, I was just wondering where we were at. We had talked about developing a safety advisory committee and bringing in Fort Nelson First Nation and the RCMP and a group of experts in safety development. And I'm not sure how we do that.
So that meeting is scheduled for October the 23rd. So I think staff will be in attendance with the Chamber of Commerce, as well as Sergeant
Moffat.
Sergeant Moffat. Would you
Yeah.
like to speak to that, please?
Yeah, we have a meeting. I'm not sure exactly how it's what's it look like yet, but it's the initial discussions around what some options, opportunities might be within the community to get that community involvement from an RCMP perspective. So it's a bit of an icebreaker between us right now. Bev's gonna represent the chamber. And actually Circle and Jamie Sergeant Moffett's supposed to be up that day too. And then from there, we'll see what materialize and what options are.
So stay tuned. Yeah. Else? Counselor Souls?
Just a counselor's perspective on UBCM. Given the fact that we were there till the 3 days that we were there were the last days of the operation of government before the writ was dropped. We were talking to a number of ministers who probably won't be working in the next little while, hopefully. But the takeaway that I got overall, I just want to give a general, I'm looking forward to the staff's feedback on it, but I think it was actually really wise for our staff and so on to aim at meetings primarily, or for us to aim them at meetings primarily with staff members of the organizations that we deal with, regardless, that are not the political side, but are on the operational side of the province. And so there were some very productive meetings, I believe. As far as the politics, the promises and future greatness, words were really cheap. You could get really good ideas presented and you're sure they're going to happen, but elections have to happen too. So anyway, it was a good meeting. Unlike in the sense where we try to have meetings with ministers so often, and we have limited takeaway from that. I think that meeting with the staff on a deeper level was useful. So.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll give my report. I've been quite busy since September the 13th. So at NDIT Northeast RAC committee meeting, that NDIT, particularly the Northeast RAC, which I chair, is working hard to try to get some legislation changed through NDIT so that Indigenous communities can be involved in the NDIT. It's going to take a legislative change. Our RAC in the Northeast have decided to invite the chiefs anyway, regardless of what the legislation says, and it'll be up to them if they want to be a voting member or not. But we're going to ask them to come in starting in January. We did project reviews, and it's the Northeast RAC is the only region in the NDIT area that is undersubscribed with respect to the money that's available for projects. So you recognize that not everything gets paid for 100%, but there is money out there for improvements in communities and nonprofits. And so if you're not already aware of what NDIT can assist with, then you can come to me or you can go to them and really understand what it is that, because there's money being left on well, it's not being left on the table. It just rolls over to the next year, but there's money out there for projects. And of course, it's not 100%. So you have to have a project in mind, and you have to have some of your own money, right, to move forward. So it's tough, no doubt about it. September 15th to 21st, we are at NDIT. Staff will give us a report. You're asking when at the next committee of the whole meeting. Today's was wouldn't expect it to go as long as it did, but there was also supposed to be another group that canceled last minute. So the next one is when we'll get a full update. I agree with what Councillor Souls said. It was the last 3 days of government, so there wasn't a lot of interest, and some of them was really obvious that they weren't even interested at all. Normally Minister Heyman is very involved and active. I don't know if he was sick or just not interested, but he just was not engaged at all. But we still talk to his staff about the Caribou plan around and the new regulations that are coming, and the fact that the fires have impacted that region so far so much that we should be looking at. And we're working with our First Nations community next door our neighbors to really look at a baseline study again to see if those regulations, restrictive regulations are still pertinent based on what's happened with the fires. We also put a pretty good plug in for RV campsites at the Muncher Lake Park. That's environment that needs to do that. And tourism was the second one because they were also encouraging us to push hard for with the Ministry of Environment around those Muncher Lake RV camping sites. So I think we made some headway there. I think they have a budget. It's not a huge budget, but I think they said that they had a budget for it. So to deal with some of that. So the other meeting that was, that I see as a bit of a highlight was the meeting that we had with the staff from Public Safety and the Solicitor General Farnsworth. It was obviously it was before the meeting that we had October the 2nd, but remember I said before we went down there that we were going to take his response to the letter from our MLA, Dan Davies, right, where he said that we should be responding as a council to our local staff sergeant. And so, I brought that. I thanked them for responding to the letter, give them a bit of an update, and then said, you said in your letter that you wanted us to interact with our local detachment and commander, and that's a problem. We just don't have one that's local and is staying. There's leadership, but it's not local experienced leadership. And he said, well, who do you talk to then? And we said that we've come all the way to this level to figure out who we should be talking to. And so I thought that I thought that his staff took that particularly to heart. And they were going to get on the phone and start talking to some. They don't dictate anything to the RCMP, but I think they can do some advising to the RCMP. So I hope that had a little bit to do with some of the activity that we started to see, as well as the RCMP finally figuring out that we're here and we're having some problems, based on the level of violence that's been happening in the community. So I feel that although it was a very short meeting, 15 minutes as usual, it was a bit of a highlight down there. I also went for the walk for Truth and Reconciliation Day on September 30th. I stayed for lunch, but I didn't stay for the dance. I had to get moving that day. I also was invited to the Daytides presentation on their geothermal project and the update that they gave. Good update. They're almost through the engineering bit, and it looks like they're in the 2025-26 looking at starting some level of construction. Yeah, so that was a presentation that they made to the members out there and invited me to that. Was good. October 1st, we did the primary care network service plan. Councillor Growing and Diana Penny's not here anymore, but yeah, that was, really starting to look at that plan and trying to move it forward. October 1st, I also met with Staff Sergeant Fensky around the safety and security issues with staff. That's when the time he told us about, the violence was targeted between people or groups who knew each other. It was not general random violence in the community. He also said that there's some information that they received that day, which now is public. So it's, and he's told us that, the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit was coming to town and are in town. You might have seen some of their Facebook posts where they're looking for certain targeted individuals. There's been some arrests since those meetings. That was information I couldn't give because it wasn't public yet at the October 2nd meeting, but those were some issues that we talked about. And I wanted to ask him if he would come out and say specifically to the public, because nobody had officially said the bit about the targeted violence between groups or individuals that knew each other. And that's what he was prepared to come and speak to. And that's what he did. That was, so then later on October the 2nd, I did a Facebook Live post right after the council meeting, well, a couple hours after that council meeting at your request to try to update the community. October 7th, staff and I attended the Regional Hospital Board Chairs meeting with Northern Health where we talk about, supposed to talk about capital. They surprised us a little bit with, some operational workshops with respect to interaction and consultation. It try not to surprise the people that come is probably the first thing they should start at, is letting you know what it is they're going to talk about at these meetings. Now, most of the projects that they talked about are in camera, so until we get our report from them, which allows us to talk about them in public. And the reason they do that, keep them in camera, is for when they put out the RFQs and they just don't want the values there. So that I guess the contractors have an idea what the potential budgets are. But I can say there are many, many pages of potential projects, and a third of the first page was all that they're able to fund with the capital money that they have. It's no secret that hospital planning for us is starting in 2025. So throw what you want in there with a question mark. Rebuilding, refurbishing, and nobody knows, right? What that's going to look like. But certainly can you remind me what the assessment that they do for the age of do you remember?
The facility assessment, the index?
Yeah, facility index. We are number two in the entire Northern Health region. And so that's why we're on the 2025 budget to start the process with respect to looking at replacement, update, whatever. Yeah.
Number 2 means second worst.
Yeah. That's right. Second worst in
Out of all
in all the facilities in Northern Health. So. Yeah. Yeah. There is no money for the CT scanner in their budget. So if we want to see money, we're either raising it somehow or we're going through the minister's special project funding, which is what that's what they do the hospitals and stuff with, right? And so normally that's not where CT scanning funding comes from, but we're probably looking at, if we want assistance, going directly to the minister and trying to make a case. But hopefully there'll be a new minister in there because we haven't spoken to this one for 6 years. Yeah. Regardless of which government gets in, if there's another minister, we might get an opportunity to start that process. As I said, we did a operations consultation interaction workshop, and I think we made it clear to them that, if they're going to interact with us, they need to do it they need to pre-plan, let us know what's happening, you get the agendas for these things fairly, I think, high profile meetings, 2 days in advance. And it's just very simple. There's no reports, there's nothing on there. So they've got to up their game from a communications perspective. And that came out of that clearly, I think, out of that workshop. October 10th, I sat with the Chamber of Commerce and gave them an update. Mainly, they were interested in the RCMP, public safety resources. And of course, by October 10th, we knew that the combined forces group task force was in town doing what they do. So I updated them. I also met with 35 residents here who wanted to talk with me and Mitch about immigration and the situation that they're in. We tried to limit it to 25. That's all we thought we could fit in here, and 35 showed up, and they're representing probably 135 people in our community that have families, and they made it clear to us that they think the system is not very fair. Many of them are afraid that if they don't get permanent residency, there's no pathway to permanent residency, that they're afraid that they're going to have to go home, and they've made this community their home back to the countries that they came from or were born in. Many of them made this community their home. There are families, there are friends, there are neighbors, they're working in many of the places in town that we all frequent, the businesses. And so the Chamber's interested in this, and you went to that meeting. And so they made some they made some suggestions, like that we might be able to take up the line. Like changing when it comes to the points that they receive for living in a rural and remote location. They get 10 points towards a total of 135 or something that they need. Many of them are sitting around the 90 to 95 points. And if they were to receive 35 or 40 points for living in a very rural community, it would put them over that needed number that they would need to for a permanent residency. And of course, they still have to go through the federal vetting to make sure that, you know, that they're not terrorists and, you know, that they're in the country appropriately and that sort of thing. So they have a lot of things, a lot of suggestions. We can't deal with the provincial agency yet because we're still in the interregnum period, but you know, we'll certainly try to work with them. We let them know a little bit about, give them a bit of an update with respect to what's happening with the community, the rural community immigration pilot project that we've supported and are trying to help move forward. With that in mind, I called my contact in the Prime Minister's office. I made that contact back in the fire. He contacted me and he said, if there's anything else that you need, don't hesitate to give me a call. So I called him today. And yes, in the Prime Minister's office, he answered. Well, he didn't, I left a message, but he phoned back like within 5 minutes. Sorry. Yeah, so he has given me 2 contacts that he knows in Minister Miller's, the federal immigration minister's office. His Northwest advisors, 2 of them, that we might, you know, I'm just gonna be straight out with him and ask him if he can put his finger on the scale for this project that we're interested in trying to move forward and just see what happens. So I also reached out to Bob Zimmer. His EA in Prince George is an immigration consultant. So I did speak with her this morning. Bob was on his way to Prince George. They were going to call me at 1, but they never did. So I'll have to follow up with that. But I think there's, you know, we've potentially made some contacts and I've reached out to those people because you can imagine losing, let's just say 100 families out of our community. Not only, you know, are the employers that hire them right now would be in a bind, but we'd be in a bind. You know, these folks are our neighbors. And so I'm interested to try to help those folks out. So those are the things that I've been doing since the last meeting. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much. Is there any business outstanding? Any notice of motions? Seeing none, is there any public in the gallery or online that wish to comment? None? Okay, there is no closed agenda for tonight, so adjournment is in order, please. Moved by Councillor Enoch, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. It was some good conversation tonight.